President Trump and Senate Majority Leader John Thune are pushing to get the Republicans' reconciliation bill passed by July 4th, but several senators are saying there needs to be more spending cuts. Our next guest has proposed a two-part bill. Joining us now, Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin. Senator, it's good to have you on. I know the president really has always been pushing for one. That's why it's called One Big Beautiful Bill. How would that help your case or your cause by splitting it into two? How would you do it?
Good morning. Well, first of all, we'd actually have time to do the work to forensically audit every line in the federal budget, every program. You know, there are over 2,600 programs in the federal budget. We haven't taken the time. You know, DOE showed us how to do this, so we ought to follow their example. But, you know, the bottom line is this is a budget reconciliation process pretty well devoid of actually talking about numbers. About the only number we heard out of the House was $1.5 trillion, which sounds like a lot until you put it in context of the CBO's 10-year projection of $89 trillion being spent, $22 trillion of projected deficit over the next 10 years. That's a $2.2 trillion deficit per year, completely unsustainable, not even coming close to returning to a reasonable pre-pandemic level of spending. So, again, we're just not taking the time to actually debate this. And by the way, I heard earlier discussions of AI. I'm using AI. For example, this morning, again, using that basic CBO projection, 1.8% growth is what they're projecting, 2% inflation. I said, well, what if we grow at 3% with 2% inflation? What's that going to do in terms of revenue? Over 10 years, about $500 billion. We lose revenue the first 4 years during the Trump administration, probably gain revenue in the last 6 years. So again, that's the kind of analysis I'm doing. That's what I want to put into a report I want to issue here within a week or so. Just laying out the basic numbers, which we have not looked at. We haven't looked at the most relevant piece of information, the fact that our deficit is out of control. It's on an upward trajectory when what we should be doing is bending the curve of the deficits down in this reconciliation process. We're not even coming close.
Senator, during President Trump's first term, before COVID, we were under $1 trillion. And that's still a lot in the deficit. And then the pandemic hit. Now, suddenly we're at $2 trillion, and we just seem to be locked in there. I know that there's some, there's interest and there's other factors that are going against this. But your idea to get back to pre-pandemic spending levels, I wish you could just flip a switch, but you can't. And every single thing that you take away, there's going to be some constituency that it's going to be the end of the world, or that's what they're going to say. What would it entail to get back to pre-pandemic spending levels? Where are those cuts?
So again, let's look at the numbers. 2019, we spent $4.4 trillion. This year, over $7 trillion. Next year, projected to be about $7.3 trillion. So again, that's a massive 58% increase in just 6 years. So rather than basically, leave most programs untouched, only focus on a couple, you need to go line by line, program by program. And I have to believe in $7,000 billion worth of spending, $7 trillion. You will literally find hundreds of billions of dollars that if you don't spend it, nobody would even notice except the grifters who are sucking down the waste and the pork. But you have to do the work. That's going to take time. It's going to be a massive effort. We haven't done the work. We haven't taken the time. But again, in proof is I've laid out these options for pre-pandemic spending going back to Clinton, Obama, and Trump, 1998, 2014, 2019. You grow all outlays except for Social Security, Medicare, and interest. Leave those as is. And then grow all other outlays by population growth and inflation, you end up with a baseline budget somewhere between $5.5 and $6.5 trillion. That's where you start. But you have to do the work. You have to do the analysis. I know the numbers. I've been forcing the numbers on my colleagues. In the Senate, we're going to look at the numbers.
Senator, you said you're using AI to kind of run through some different scenarios. That's interesting because that's sort of what Jamie Dimon was suggesting the government do last week when he was speaking at the Reagan Library, except for he was suggesting that you stress test it for much worse times, kind of like the banks have to do these stress tests. Did you stress test it to find out if GDP dropped to 1% or if it dropped to negative levels, what that would mean?
I could literally do that in about 10 minutes. So, yeah, that's what I want to lay out in my report. We'll stress test it. I just did the first run on the rosy scenario. 3% growth, which we haven't achieved. By the way, the last 20 years, we've averaged 2% growth. So, Reinhardt and Rogoff talked about in their book, this time it's not different, or whatever the title was. Once you hit 80% of GDP of debt held by the public, you harm economic growth. We may be at that point right now. We're way beyond 8% or 80%. So again, we have to look at this, and my latest chart just shows at what you said, Joe. Obama, his last term, he averaged deficits of $550 billion. Trump's first 3 years, $810 billion. Then, of course, he had COVID, $3.1 trillion. Reasonable leadership would have brought it back down to under $1 trillion. Joe Biden averaged deficits of $1.9 trillion, and that's where it starts. We're going to have a $1.9 trillion deficit rising to about 2.5 over the next 10 years. Again, it's completely unsustainable. This is insane what we're doing. No American family, if they had an illness, had to borrow $50,000 to pay for medical bills. If that family member got well, would keep borrowing $50,000 and spend at that level. That's what the federal government has done. It's completely unjustified, but we need the time to do the work. And I'm sorry, the one big beautiful bill, we haven't taken the time.
So, Senator, it's been said that if there was like a fairly small bill that just extended the 2017 tax cuts, do you think you could get both sides? You got people in the Senate. There's some like you. There's others that have a totally different situation with the states that they represent. Same within the House. So you can see the Freedom Caucus, and then you see, on the other side, it's impossible to please everyone all the time. That's why this isn't going to get done. I guess that's your point. It's not going to get done in one big bill, right? If you try and throw everything in there, what would it look like? Where would you do President Trump's tax on tips and on overtime, and which part of the bill would that be in? How would you split it up?
So I would focus on the areas of greatest agreement, supplying, funding for the border and border security. Defense, I guess we have to do that. I would take whatever spending cuts, and the House done pretty good work on their limited number of spending cuts. I'd bank those. I would extend current tax law, take an automatic tax increase off the table. I would extend the debt ceiling for a year, and I'd leave everything else for a second bite at the apple here, where there's the pressure to do it. We can't do this in one bite of the apple. It's obvious we can't.
You can do both with
Elon
reconciliation.
Musk is absolutely right.
So you can do both. You can do it twice.
Absolutely. We've got fiscal year 2025. That's what this reconciliation bill is. We should be debating a 2026 budget right now, so we've got that reconciliation. You can do 3 bills in each reconciliation package. We're bundling up just one bill in this reconciliation. So we have all kinds of bites of the apple. We should use that. And President Trump has to realize the debt ceiling is leverage for him to accomplish what he said he wanted to accomplish in the State of the Union, balance the federal budget. We're not even coming close. We're not even turning the deficit trajectory downward. It's skyrocketing.
Senator Johnson, you're often mentioned in the same breath with Senator Rand Paul. He agrees with you on a lot of these different issues. We had him on the program yesterday, and last night he put something out on X in response to Elon Musk's statement on this. Elon had tweeted or had put on X, "I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination." Rand Paul put up this tweet. He said, "I agree with Elon. We have both seen the massive waste in government spending. We know another $5 trillion in debt is a huge mistake." Do you agree with Rand Paul on this?
Well, again, I'm going to be focusing on the numbers. Use CBO's 10-year base as our baseline. Their projection is a baseline. And then let's start honestly discussing where we're at. And, again, my latest chart just shows the unsustainable nature of this, how deficits are going to continue to skyrocket. We're not even coming close to even having a possibility of balancing the budget. So I'm going to focus on the numbers. I'm not going to be insulting anybody.
Does what Elon said give you additional kind of help in your quest on this?
Yeah, it certainly bolsters our case. He was in the inside. He showed us with President Trump how to do this. Contract by contract, line by line. We have to do that forensic audit. We don't take the time. Again, we exempt most programs, focus on a couple, tweak and get a CBO score. That's really out of context. I mean, the context is all about $22 trillion in expected deficit. And by the way, that counts about $4 trillion of tax increase, which I don't want to incur. But if we don't incur that, you got to make up for about $4 trillion in revenue. How do you do that? That's why I'm starting to do these AI sensitivity analysis. And by the way, mindful that AI is often confidently wrong. You got to check your work. So I haven't checked this work, but Again, that's how you approach this. You actually look at the numbers, take the personalities out of it, take the invective out of it, take the insults out of it, look at the cold, hard facts. If you do that, you get depressed really fast, and hopefully it'll cause all of us to act. This is our one chance. This is our once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to reset government spending at a reasonable pre-pandemic level. We can't blow it. We can't count on winning another election, having another shot in 2027. This is our time. We have to take this seriously.
So let's say that, you stick to your guns here, but at this point, if I characterize what you want to do as a long shot, is that overstating it? I mean, I can see Senator Thune, Majority Leader Thune. It's not a long shot.
No, it's not a long shot because we have enough of us who are going to say no. Listen, we all support the president. We want to see him succeed. Yes, we want to see him succeed. Yeah, we want, but again, my loyalty is to our kids and grandkids. We're mortgaging their future. So there's enough of us who have that attitude that very, very respectfully, we just have to say, Mr. President, I'm sorry. One big, beautiful bill was not the best idea. We should have done what John Thune always wanted to do, split this up into multiple parts. I always said 3 parts. He said 2. Time's crunch. Now it's back down to 2 parts. Uses of 2 budget reconciliations, but you need to keep enough on the table to force us to come back here and do the work, take the time to actually reduce spending to a reasonable level.
I mean, the Senate is going to look at the House version, and the Senate's going to do its own version. It just seems like it's in motion already. And
well, again,
go ahead.
So the president and Senate leadership has to understand that we're serious. They always say, "Oh, we can pressure these guys." No, you can't. Okay, again, we're being very respectful. I ran in 2010 as part of the Tea Party movement. We were mortgaging our children's future. We were $14 trillion in debt then. Now we're over $37 trillion. We're serious about this. They need to take us seriously. Don't insult us. Work with us. Lay out the numbers. If you can say that our numbers are wrong, fine. Let's work through it. But again, every analysis I have, there's greater upside risk to that deficit. Interest rates are moving up. If we go increase interest rates 1%, that's another $4 trillion over 10 years in terms of deficit. If we don't replace the $4 trillion, that's $4 trillion of lost revenue. Again, and growing the economy 3%, it adds to it a little bit, but mostly in the out years. So again, come to the table. Let's look at the numbers. If I'm wrong, prove that I'm wrong. But let's do it with respect, but mainly respect for our children and grandchildren. This is immoral, what us old farts are doing to our young people. This is grotesque, what we're doing. We need to own up to that. This is our moment. I can't accept this scenario. I can't accept it, so I won't vote for it unless we are serious about fixing it.